27.
Joseph Stanley here with Rooted 27, a podcast ministry of Red House Baptist Church. And we have Sean Loredan behind the camera, and he handles our recording and editing and things of that nature. And we're glad that you decided to listen in today for this podcast. As many of you may know, if you've listened in the past, we base our show on Colossians 2:7, which speaks of us becoming rooted in Jesus Christ, so that we're building our lives upon Him. And that happens in a variety of ways, whether we're talking about a theological issue, an ethical or moral issue, or we're staying gospel focused and through all of that. But we want you to be educated and you to be informed about what we're seeing today, what's happening around us. We also want to be aware of what we believe and why we believe it, and to have the foundational truths to go along with it. So today I'm very excited to be joined by a guest, and here in the next couple of weeks we'll have a guest every week, so I hope you'll come back and listen. But today we're joined by Nolan Graham, and we're going to be discussing a lot with the pro-life movement, sanctity of life, and what is the biblical foundation for why Christians should hold to a pro-life position. With this week being the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, I thought it would be appropriate for us as Christians to consider these matters as very sobering thought, and then to think about it in a biblical way, so we can develop our biblical worldview when it comes to subjects like abortion, life, death, and things of that nature, to see what the scriptures teaches us. So welcome, Nolan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, just usually to start out, I like to ask people a little bit about themselves. So tell us a little about how long you've been here at the church, what you do here, and just a little bit about your life.
I've been here about 9 years. My wife and I moved here from Ohio to be close to our daughter, to our family. All our children had moved away, and so we moved to Richmond, and we've liked it a lot. We found Red House within a matter of 3 months, I think. We kind of examined several churches and found this one to be the one where we felt comfortable, but most of all, where at that time I thought there was good preaching, good solid preaching. That summer, Pastor Darren came and moved in next door to us, became our neighbor. That didn't make me feel obligated to be part of the church, but it was kind of a bonus. So I examined everything I could about him online and such as that when he came, and believed that he would be a good expository preacher and preach through the Word. We've not been disappointed by that. So that's why we joined the church, and kind of how we came here.
Okay. And you help out with the Sunday school, is that correct? Or
they tell me I'm the Sunday school director. I'm not entirely certain what that means, but I do whatever I can to help in terms of assisting others in ordering the literature, that sort of thing, and working on making sure we have teachers and assistant teachers, all that. And we try to do some training. That's been interrupted a great deal during the COVID pandemic, but yes, I try to do those things.
We appreciate you being here at the church and helping out. Tell us a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in a Christian home? Was you a Christian saved at a young age?
I'm one of the most fortunate people on the planet in terms of that background. My family certainly, they weren't wealthy or anything like that. Very working class, but my parents really loved the Lord. They both knew Him and raised me in the Word, and just really saturated as a child with the Word and with attending church and hearing good preaching. And I honestly do not know when I really received Christ or became a Christian. It was such an automatic process. Just suddenly I knew that I did believe, that I had asked Him to be my Savior, that I believed I was saved and indwelt by the Holy Spirit. And all through school, grew up learning more and more of the Word and being in it. My father died when I was 16, and things changed a lot then. I had to become more responsible for myself, and still had a lot of help in the world, that's for sure. But I went off to college as a freshman. Before I went to campus, I had prayed for weeks that the Lord would lead me to some other Christians, some guys I could really fellowship with. I knew that I would need that. It was a big change for me. I came from a very small town, went to a city to go to a university. And my first day in the dormitory, moved in on a Sunday, a guy came walking down the hall that I knew. I had met in another church, and I knew him and knew that he was a Christian and that I had at least one friend close. And before the day was out, he had introduced me to a fellow named John Gwynn, who was he was one of the genuine characters in the world and a great lover of Jesus. Uh-huh. And he was involved with a group called the Navigators, and I got plugged into that group as a Christian fellowship and Bible study, and they helped me develop the basics of the Christian life, having a quiet time every day and developing a prayer life, fellowshipping with other believers, getting plugged into a church, and witnessing, how to share your testimony, how to share your faith. We used to go around campus from door to door in all the dormitories, and we called it cold turkey evangelism, and just go knocking on doors and saying, "Can I talk to you for a minute? You got a minute? I'd like to talk to you about Jesus." And of course, we had every reaction in the world. Sometimes you got cussed out. Sometimes you got the door slammed, and sometimes they asked you in. So being a part of that group was really an important part of your spiritual formation. Several years of real fundamental discipleship training, and that's marked the rest of my life. I have not fulfilled nearly as much of that as I wish I had. Life does sweep us along sometimes, and working and family and such as that, you can get distracted by many things. I've always thought of myself as very similar to Christian in Pilgrim's Progress. Mm-hmm. He's on a journey. He's on a narrow path. And it's easy to get distracted and step off the path even just a little way. And the next thing you know, you've wasted time. You've gotten involved in things that are extraneous to the Christian life. And that happens to us in small measure or large, I think, all through life. But God is faithful. And, it's Him I depend on. It's Him I depend on to draw me back. And He always has. And like Christian, I am looking forward to the day when I arrive at journey's end, and I'm there with the Lord in the celestial city.
Absolutely. Well, part of the reason I want you to come on was I know you're involved with the pro-life movement to some degree, and if you could tell us what you do in that movement right now and how you kind of got involved and interested.
Currently, I'm president of the Madison County Right to Life Association. That's a local group affiliated with Kentucky Right to Life, larger group, mm-hmm. and also affiliated through them with National Right to Life, which is the largest national group working for pro-life legislation and for education, for compiling and distributing statistics regarding abortion, such as that, just general information for people. So as president of that group, I tried to keep our group, to incite them to activity and mm-hmm. To keep us moving. We maintain a billboard on I-75 with a good pro-life message. It's seen by thousands every day. There was an abortion facility in Lexington, and we felt very good about having that billboard there, because anyone traveling from parts south to Lexington for the purpose of an abortion would see that billboard. That facility gloriously has been closed. It's not there anymore. Unfortunately, there are 2 facilities in Louisville, and we're actively engaged in trying to assist people there, sidewalk counseling, all that sort of thing. That's pretty much what we do here.
Okay. Tell us the significance of January 22nd, 1973.
Well, at the time it occurred, I certainly was unaware of it, not paying much attention, as I believe most Christians were. We were mostly asleep. There were some who were awake. It's little known, but Louisville Right to Life was actually founded the year before Roe v. Wade. Some people saw it coming, but most of us were kind of asleep. Abortion's a terrible, dreadful thing. We didn't want to know about it, didn't want to hear about it, didn't think it concerned us. And I certainly felt that way. In the mid-'80s, it was that long, I suddenly became aware of this through a pastor of a church. We had moved and joined another church, and this pastor was very mindful of these things. And I saw a film called The Silent Scream. I've only seen it once. I'll never need to watch it again because it is a very graphic depiction of the product of abortion and what happens to these innocent children when they're plucked from the womb and destroyed in various ways. That convinced me that this was something that a Christian just could not overlook. This is going on and people don't know about it. We need to do something. A few years after that, we moved to Ohio and pretty quickly got involved with the Right to Life group in that little town. And I've been a part of that ever since, my wife and I both. So.
Give us some statistics concerning abortion and concerning those things right now since 1973 to now.
Well, the main thing is just to realize that abortion is the status quo. It is the current situation, and it goes on all the time, very routinely, without much notice by most people. We have now legally in this country since that date, the decision of Roe v. Wade legalized abortion throughout the country. We have killed over 61 million babies.
Wow.
It has averaged just about 1 million a year. It was a good deal more than that for a long time. In recent years, it has fallen somewhat below 1 million. These numbers, by the way, come from the Guttmacher Institute, which is actually an affiliate of Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the country. So there's not much reason to doubt that those are at least the numbers. They may be more. I don't know that it would be to advantage of them to over-report or under-report too much. But at any rate, those who are involved in providing abortions are the ones who compile these numbers. So
I think it's interesting. I don't know, you may be aware of this, but a pamphlet produced by Planned Parenthood in the 60s listed abortion as being murder of a child. And I read that the other day in a book on ethics, and then that shifted so much years down the road, changed. I want to kind of get a biblical foundation, though, why Christians should be pro-life, because, I mean, there are some people who go around saying they're Christians, but they're pro-choice, and it really kind of seems absurd to me personally. But give us a reason why, what the Bible teaches about life, why it should be valued, why we say it's sacred, and why we should support organizations like Right to Life and things of that nature as Christians.
Well, yeah, it's certainly true that many who claim the name of Christ believe that abortion should be legal. I think many of them are not truly believers. I don't think they're biblical Christians. But I certainly couldn't exclude that as a possibility. People have different opinions for so many reasons. The wealth, health, or welfare of the mother is often the major concern to them. Unfortunately, often people are very staunchly pro-life until a young woman in their own family has an unwanted pregnancy, and then often they suddenly change their mind. And that's unfortunate. Principles are not something to be shed just because of a personal situation, I don't think.
Kind of turns hypocritical.
Yeah, that's easy to say, maybe harder to do. Nonetheless, we either believe the Bible or we don't. We understand what it says or we've misunderstood it. So to change a position like that to me is very serious thing. There are some several passages that form kind of a basis for having a pro-life worldview. Psalm 139 is often quoted there, verses 11 and 12. God, it's interesting. In 139, 11, it says that God sees in the dark. And I was reading that just last night, and it occurred to me that means God sees in the womb too. He certainly does. God can see in the dark. Verse 13 says that he forms our inward parts. He's responsible for constructing us, for creating us the way we are. And verse 14 says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. What a great statement by the psalmist. It's true. Fearfully made. We are made in such a way that it ought to have us be in awe of our Creator because of the way He does things. You know, in Exodus 1:17, you have the story of the Hebrew midwives, and that's an interesting example of people who it says that the midwives feared God, and so they would not obey Pharaoh and abort the Hebrew children. They feared God.
They value what God said over man.
And Proverbs tells us the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So wisdom leads you to value life. And then back to Psalm 139, verse 14, talks about giving thanks for life. What a wonderful gift. What a marvelous thing God has done to give us life. It is something to be really
So even if the
thankful
situation
for.
isn't ideal or as a result of sin, we can still be thankful for the life that's in the womb.
Yes,
regardless.
life is life. It's a gift and not something to be spurned or wasted. That's one of the things personally that bothers me so about the idea of abortion is it's so wasteful. It wastes potential. The potential of life is tremendous. The value of an individual is tremendous. Jesus died for each of us individually. God valued us that much. God made each of us individually. That's a marvelous thing, the worth of an individual person. I think the real foundation of a pro-life attitude, though, is right in the beginning, Genesis 1:26 and 27. God made us in His own image. We are more like Him than any other creature. We were made to represent God. It's what being made in His image really means. That's why life is sacred. God made us to be a picture of Himself on earth.
When that life is destroyed, we're removing God's
It's
image.
an insult to God.
Yeah.
It really is.
We're saying God got it wrong.
Yes, this life is not worth living, so I'm going to destroy it. Whether that's my own life through suicide or the life of a parent through euthanasia or the life of a child through abortion, that's wasting a life. Genesis 9:6 says that murder, the intentional killing of a person, is deserving of death itself. It's the only thing in the Bible that's mentioned that way. Societies in the world have sometimes levied the death penalty for other things besides murder. But in the Bible, that's the one thing, the only thing that would be deserving of death. And I think that just shows the value God places upon it and the deterrent effect He wants to have by that.
You know, I think it's interesting. I was reading a book by Richard Land, and he wrote in there, I wrote it down here, there's no purposeless or meaningless life.
No.
Every life has a purpose. Every
Yes.
life has a meaning, whether it's the life that's in the womb or
Yes.
the elderly person who has Alzheimer's who doesn't know anything. Each life has a purpose. And I was also reading that in a book by Paul Copen, I believe his name is, that life, anytime we see in Scripture described a baby who is in the womb, the word that is used there describing the baby, describing the infant that's in the womb, is not some other word describing it as something other than human. It's considered a person just as much as you or I are
Yes.
considered
Yes.
a person. Just like John the Baptist, when he's in the womb and he leaped when Mary came and the Holy Spirit filled him, they thought of him as a person in Elizabeth's womb. It wasn't that he was just some blob of tissue there. So you think it's important that we see that each person is created in the image of God, and then also see that that is a life in the womb. It's not just a blob of tissue, that it's an actual person.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think God makes junk.
Exactly.
We are created with a purpose and given a life as a gift, and how we use that may be very different from person to person. There are many stories of people who, by the standards of the world, ought to have been aborted and never seen the light of day, who then have gone on. Our pastor recently told a story about Beethoven and his terrible family situation, and his mother who had born children with horrible defects and all, and then he came along late. Today, in the world, one of the greatest operatic singers to ever live is Andrea Bocelli, and his mother was strongly advised to have an abortion, to not give him birth. She would not. She did deliver him. He was born blind, but he has, in my view, maybe the best voice on the planet. Mm-hmm. Tremendous singer. So you never know the actual value as we would measure it of a life. That means we certainly can't measure the value that life has to God, because he's the creator and he has a purpose for it. And whether the person gets an opportunity to be on a world stage like Andrea Bocelli, or they just live a very quiet, private life, they may have a great purpose that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. So to destroy that that's such a waste.
And who are we to determine what life is value and what life doesn't have value?
Certainly.
A child's born with some type of disease or some type of illness or mental illness, just because we don't view that person as being, holding this great value in the world and they're going to accomplish all of these things, that doesn't mean they have any less value in the eyes of God.
No, not at all.
Because God created them.
Yeah.
God knows exactly their needs. He knows exactly their problems, and he created them anyway and wants them to be part of society. So we don't have a right as a people who's also image bearers of God to go around saying, no, you don't deserve to live because you don't match what I think you should be.
Absolutely. Scripture also says that God is no respecter of persons. Now, that doesn't mean that he has no respect for persons. It means he does not respect one person over another.
Exactly.
He doesn't choose one instead of another for anything that has to do with that individual person. It's not their abilities or qualifications or their position or their birth or their race or their sex or anything else. God respects all people alike because we're all human beings in his image.
How does that go into being pro-life or valuing life from the womb to the tomb, as people say, from the moment they're, conceived to the moment they die? How can we create an attitude where we're valuing all life, whether it's, as we talked about euthanasia earlier, or anything of that nature?
All these causes are of great concern. Euthanasia certainly is a growing thing in the world, legalized in many countries. About 6 states or so in America have these kinds of plans to allow a person to be assisted in dying, basically. It's kind of like looking through the other end of the telescope. If we don't know the value of an unborn child, and we're taking a responsibility of God's on ourselves if we destroy that life, well, on the other end, we don't know the purpose of the end of a person's life either. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about things like the relief of pain. I don't think there's any need to allow a person to suffer if relief of pain is available. But to artificially terminate that life is, again, to play God, to take God's role in our hands and to disrespect the image of God in that person. Assisted suicide is even a good deal worse. That phenomenon has grown in some parts of the world a great deal, where a person demands to have what has been called radical autonomy. That is, it's my life. I can do whatever I want with it. And if I'm just tired of living, or I think my life is not worthwhile, I should be allowed to kill myself, and that should be legal. I should get assistance from medical assistance or whatever I need. Again, this is just a very pernicious doctrine. It's just the idea that that I am my own maker, my own master. The fundamental principle you always run into with the value of life is whether a person has a belief in God to start with. If there is any particle of fear of God, then that person's going to have some regard for life. Mm-hmm. And to have no regard for life, to feel that we're just our own, we own ourselves and we can do what we want, is to deny that there is a God.
Because it goes back to our sin-fallen state people are in, where they want to be the God. It's like, go back to the garden. What was Adam and Eve's desire? They wanted to determine right and wrong. The devil tempted them, and they said, yeah, we want to be the ones who determine right and wrong, not God. We want self-autonomy.
It's usurping the authority of God. This is exactly what it is.
And I guess we need gospel transformation in our lives. People need to begin to change their hearts and minds, and then it should flow over to a biblical perspective on these matters. When that doesn't happen, then you got to question, is someone really experienced conversion, or what's happened in that area? I want to move on to, okay, we say we're pro-life. You and I agree on that. But what can Christians do more than just simply stating, yeah, I support life, I'm against abortion? What can we do in the form of action?
Yeah, I gave some thought to that and made a little list.
Okay, thank you.
The first thing I think is we do truly, and people always say this, possibly because it sounds good, but it is absolutely true. We need to be praying for an end to abortion, praying that the Lord will move to uphold his righteous standard in the world. Why does he not do that instantly and end abortion? Why does he not end all sin? I mean, we do play a role here. We've been given its latitude in our decisions and how we will live, and this is another one of them. It doesn't mean that God is not offended by abortion. It doesn't mean he doesn't value those lives. It doesn't mean that at all. It means he wants us to do something, and praying and striving with God toward this end is just, I think, a natural part of the Christian life. We pray for all things, and we expect that God hears our prayers.
And I think the prayer part is important because, like I said, I say it all the time, but how often in my actual prayer life am I sitting there praying to God, Lord, end abortion in America and across the world even?
Yes.
When do we actually consider that God can move in that situation? And it's not just like it's never going to end, we're always going to be dealing with this. When we serve a God who's powerful, all powerful, if he can do it.
Yeah. Well, and the timetable is obviously in God's hands.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a year, it could be a day, it could be a century, or a millennium. We don't have control of that, but we're still responsible before God to pray for his kingdom to come, for his will to be done on earth. Second thing we can do, very fundamental, important thing, is to give. Put your money where your mouth is. Our Pregnancy Help Center in town does a tremendous job of assisting women who may be in danger of having an abortion because of distress during the pregnancy, because it's an unwanted, unplanned child, any number of things. That center offers great material and emotional and spiritual comfort and support for those women. And after the baby is delivered, they still are of assistance to them. So that's another thing, is to put some money into these things. Madison County Right to Life has various projects, or a billboard project. We do need funds for that. The state and national Right to Life organizations also are only funded by donations, dues, and such as that for people that belong. Another thing to do is to watch the KBC. Watch our local association for opportunities. They have something they're working on now called Friends of Life Kentucky. And I don't have the details yet, but I'm excited to hear what all they want to do. I'm sure that it will be a very prayer-oriented effort, but that's something to be aware of. Be informed. Pay attention to the news. Now, many of my friends here in the church, in my opinion, pay far too much attention to the news. They're too saturated.
It can easily happen,
news,
yeah.
And it gets depressing. But don't put your head in the sand either. Be aware of what's going on. We should all be aware of the bills that are in the legislature right now in Kentucky, and lend our support where we can. Voting pro-life is an essential thing to do. Vote for candidates that will support life. I took a vow myself over 20 years ago. I would never, ever vote for a person who supports abortion. If the day comes when there are no candidates that are pro-life, then I'll be done with voting. I hate to say that, but if that day ever comes, I will feel that the major issue in life, which is life, will have been so compromised that there's no point. As long as there is a candidate available, that's who I will vote for. So I think that's very important. And last but not least, there are some other activities that occur in our community. We have a National Prayer Chain event every October. attend those things. That's one way to stand up and be counted. And there are other times, walks for life in various cities. They have a couple of them in Lexington every year. These are things we can do to stand up and be counted. One of the best things to do is not available this year. I'm very disappointed, but it's because of COVID-19. On or as near as possible to the date of the Roe v. Wade decision, January 22nd, every year since 1973, there has been a national march in Washington. Been there several times, tens upon tens of thousands of people march in the street. You don't see much on the normal newscasts, the regular newscasts, so you would know it happens. But that event is a signal event because the city of Washington cannot ignore the fact that there are thousands of people willing to travel from every state in the union, even Hawaii. I mean, they come from everywhere.
Wow.
To march in the street and say, I believe in life. I believe abortion is wrong. And they march down Constitution Avenue and end up at the Supreme Court headquarters right in front of where the Supreme Court meets for its deliberations every year. That's a great event to attend. It's very encouraging. People of all ages, from old folks in wheelchairs to babies in strollers and everything in between. Many, many young people, teenagers by the thousands. It's great to see them. That's a great event to attend. It's going to be a virtual event this year. There will be some speakers who speak publicly. There won't be much of a crowd, and I don't think there'll be any march in the street. So that's too bad. But hopefully that event will occur again in the future if it's needed, unless we can end abortion and never need to march again. So.
Definitely. Something I made a habit of doing probably when I was 16, and I still try to do it from time to time. If there is a pro-life legislation in Kentucky, say, for instance, find out who your local legislator is and send them an email, not harassing them to vote for something, but voicing your opinion to say, hey, I support this. And I've did that with Democratic legislators and Republican. Some of them are really accepting of my views and some of them aren't. Either way, I think it's important as people part of a community to be aware who your legislators are, your congresspeople, your local representatives, senators, and then send them. It's very simple to go online. You can find their email address, send them, voice your opinion, just a couple sentences, or write them a letter just to let them know as people of their community, of their their local district, how you feel about that issue, and that as Christians we should be supporting life. So that's something I made a habit of doing for a while now.
That's great.
And I would encourage other people to do that as well. Be aware of who works in the Capitol, and then be able to contact them.
There's a very easy way to do that. There's an organization called the Family Foundation of Kentucky, headed by a man named Kent Ostrander. He's spoken at our church. That organization is available online, on Facebook, probably Twitter and other
I get their
accounts
email
as well.
Updates regularly.
But if you like them on Facebook, for instance, you will get their bulletins, and they will tell you when something needs to be called about. If there's a pro-life piece of legislation, they'll send you a message and tell you call your representative, call the committee chairman, whatever committee that piece of legislation is in, and the Speaker of the House, if necessary, whoever they need to contact. They'll give you their numbers, and they'll make it very easy, and we'll keep you updated. So that's what I do. I try to rely on them, and whenever he sends a bulletin, then I know I need to make a call.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good idea, and I think it's also good if we know the legal side of the legislator, we stay involved in that, and then we also promote life in general in a daily life. That not that we're voicing our opinion, being harsh to everybody we encounter, but we have an attitude where we support life, so that it can change the culture in general. Because they can ban abortion, but if half the people in America is still supporting it, we're going to run into a lot of trouble. So it'd be good if we've seen the gospel still being promoted, people being saved, hearts and mind being changed, where they're believing a biblical worldview when it comes to moral issues and life issues in general. Is there any closing thoughts you have?
Well, I just would second what you're saying. I've had it impressed on me a couple of times here just in recent days that abortion will never change just because we change the laws. And it won't change because we run Planned Parenthood or other abortion clinics out of business. it'll only change if we see hearts change. And as far as I can see, the only way hearts really ever change is through the gospel.
Exactly, yeah.
We can use it. There's an organization called I'm not going to remember the name now, but it's a Louisville organization headed up by a fellow who was at Southern Seminary that is committed to that very thing. And that's using the gospel as a means to reach people and talk to them about life, and vice versa. Their motto, I think, is along the lines of, it would be a tragedy to persuade a woman not to have an abortion and never share the gospel with her. If she never became a Christian, that would have been such a lost opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's quite true. So,
yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on today, and we'll be praying for your the organization you're a part of, and we can be praying about these issues in the days ahead. And we thank you for listening today. And I would also encourage you to be praying about this issue, as Nolan has mentioned, and just keep our minds focused upon the Lord in the days ahead. We don't know what the future will bring in our country, but we do know that God is still in control as Christians, so we can keep our minds focused upon Him. If you ever have any questions for us, you can go to our Facebook page and comment there, or message us a question, and we'll be happy to answer it. You can also subscribe to our Apple Podcast channel at Rooted27. We have on YouTube as well, and if you have want more information about our church, you can go to redhousebc.com. Thank you.
Thanks again for watching. You can connect with us via our website at redhousebc.com, or connect with us on social media by searching for Rooted27, or you can also subscribe by searching D House Media RHBC on YouTube. Subscribe now.